Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 20th episode of Tell Your Story, the web series based after my book, Stories from Web. What I seek to do through this web series is find different people who have inspired me by them sharing their stories and allow me to bring them out to you, and hopefully you can catch a glimpse of who they are and be inspired as well. I'm super thrilled to have my guest this week, Jon White. Jon, thanks so much for being here. Why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, absolutely. I am a fifth grade teacher in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Been teaching for 3 years, and I'm here with my wife, who's also an educator, our 2 dogs and our 2 cats. So I apologize if there's any background noise or anything like that happening.
That's just real life, right? That's all it is.
Right, absolutely.
So let's kind of jump into this a little bit, Jon, with your career in education. So how long have you worked in education? I know you've taught for 3 years, but you've worked in education for 5, right?
That's right, yeah. So I actually started off as a substitute, subbing in autism clusters. And there was something about that where I didn't really know where I was going in life at that point. And as soon as I got into that autism cluster, like things started to make sense to me. And it was a beautiful experience. And, both my parents are actually educators. So I think I saw myself as a teacher, but I never committed to it. And then almost by accident, I was subbing, found my way into this school, and started subbing. From there, I was moved into like an interim sub position. And finally, 3 years ago, I got my first classroom as a 4th grade teacher. So, and it's just been a long road since then, but an awesome time.
So looking at that subbing position, were you looking for that kind of classroom environment, or were you just looking for a job and that one opened up and so you tried out the autism unit?
Yeah, actually, I was just subbing, and my teacher at my principal right now, he had asked me to come to me, and I guess he had been, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but he was in a position where he needed to hire more males. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if I was in the right place at the right time. And I was subbing from school to school, and he brought me into the autism cluster at his school. So I was just basically moved from like a sub in the county to a pool sub. So I wasn't looking for it at all. I wasn't looking to move into autism. When I found myself there, though, I think that's when like kind of things started to align for me.
What do you think is probably one of the biggest lessons you learned from that kind of placement before going into your own classroom?
Oh man, it's one of the things that I'll still use, calm down strategies that I learned in that classroom, and I still use ways that I diffuse just meltdowns is still from things that I learned my first week on the job in an autism classroom.
So is education a path that you always were kind of interested in, or how did it lead to that career?
I was actually an English major, just stubborn. My dad told me, like, don't major in English, man. You won't have a job. And sure enough, he was right. And I graduated, and I didn't know really where to go. And I actually thought that I might do well in the military. And that didn't turn out well for me, and kind of found myself back at home, kind of lost a little bit, found myself in the classroom, and I finally started to, I don't want to say have an identity, because I don't like so much attaching our identities just to our roles, but I really found I found like who I was supposed to be in that classroom, and things started to make sense to me, and I almost did get my identity back, because after really working hard and thinking that I would be in the military and having that kind of just disintegrate in front of me, I was really lost. I was just in a bad space. So finding myself as an educator is something that's really kind of helped me kind of mold myself into who I want to be.
So how did from the military, how did that lead to education? Was it a job that you kind of had opened up and you were like, let me try this out, or?
Yeah, I think, it's so weird. Like, I grew up in a school. I mean, my dad was a earth science teacher. So I grew up, in the mornings, going to his classroom, playing with the rocks, watching him teach like first period, walking to elementary school, coming back, hanging around campus, and he would coach baseball. I mean, I grew up in a high school. Almost on accident, I always saw myself as a teacher. since from a very young age, I always saw myself as a teacher, but I couldn't commit to it. So when I had found myself kind of, I guess, knocked down,
Right.
it was my dad who told me, like, look, man, just start subbing, make some money until you can kind of build yourself back up, and subbing was the answer, because subbing has led me into this amazing career that I'm in now.
So you've been in the classroom this is your third year now?
This is my third year, yeah. So I started in fourth, and when I got moved up to fifth, that's when I really was like, I've connected so much with my fifth graders. I think how they, their developmental age, I can connect to really well. I don't know what that says about me, but I love it.
No shame there. I taught fifth grade and I felt the same way, so I totally can connect with you on that one.
Yeah, we laugh at the same jokes. It's wild. So.
Yep, I always just say, what I loved about fifth grade is they love gross and they love stupid, and I can totally do both of those. So
got it. Check. Got it. Yep.
So what do you think is the biggest thing you've learned about yourself along this journey to discovering what you feel like is a career that was meant for you?
So what I've really learned about myself is that I need to be true to me. I think the military was me. I wanted other people's respect. I wanted other people's praise, in a sense. And I wasn't being true to who I was. So being a teacher, and even at first, I don't know if I really felt proud to say it. And, what I found is that, like, this is who I am, and I embrace it now, and I feel so empowered by it. And I feel good to say I'm a teacher now. So it's just, I guess what I found is, like, we have to stay true to ourselves. And what I've found especially true is because this is something that matters to me and I'm really working on it. But I need to stop worrying about other people's expectations or trying to meet their expectations. I think,
and I find that is, a lot of people talk about that, but I think as educators, we are so hard on ourselves with that, of feeling like we have to rise to these expectations that aren't even our own. Like expectations we've viewed, like we think people are looking at us like this, but we've just putting it on ourselves.
Just putting it on ourselves. So when I've realized, what those things are and kind of how to understand them, like feel it, and then just say, hey, that's like some outside pressures that I don't have to live up to that, So I guess just feeling comfortable in my skin right now is just one of the best things that me personally, mentally, the space I'm in.
So what does your dad think about you being in education now?
He loves it. I mean, he was in the classroom for 15 years. He's moved into PE, so he loves his job. Mm-hmm. He's got a job where, him and I now, we talk on the same wavelength, and my wife's an educator too. So like, it's just talk always about education in our home and our family dinners. So
what does your wife teach?
She teaches sixth grade math, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she's dealing with the middle school age, so she always has interesting stories when we come home. And like when we unwrap our day at dinner, like her stories always win.
So I've got a great question that I think some educators might connect with is, you and your wife are both in education. And as you know, being an educator, sometimes education, if we let it, can consume every part of our lives, where it's like we don't have a life outside of teaching. How do you and your wife find ways to be y'all and also the teacher?
That's such an amazing question, because we deal with that. Like our dinner table right now is covered with her math papers that she's grading, and it is really hard to turn off the education talk. But I guess probably one of the things and this is the only thing that helps us not talk about it, is when we have our family over. Because our families, when we have them over, we have to find some common grounds that we can all meet on. So being with family helps us really kind of like turn off our educator brains and kind of just think about, just be normal and not talk about the behavior yesterday, or like, the parent conference you had, and just talk about things that everyone in the room can relate to. So it's just family time.
Yeah, my wife did pre-K for about 6 years, and that our entire dinner table conversation was always school and all the craziness that both of us saw. And it was like, okay, once we leave the dinner table, no more school talk. It's just we have to be real people because if you're not careful, it can consume everything, and then you find yourself just it's like, God, I can't ever escape teaching.
Yeah, I love that. I think soon we might actually have to set some rules kind of like that, like you and your wife did. I think that's a great idea.
So do you ever see yourself teaching any higher or any lower?
I don't know. I mean, that's a great question. I love fifth grade. I really love it. I was an English major. I would love to break into like some Steinbeck or like Hemingway, or just I would love to be in like a high school English class, like really dissecting some great American literature that I really love. So if that was the only thing that I could get away with, possibly. But right now I'm super, super satisfied with fifth grade, and I really kind of see myself there.
So, you're an English language arts teacher, you're an English major. I've got to ask the question, what is a great book that you've read recently?
So I actually, it's funny. I just got into the Diary of Anne Frank because I never read that, and it's a tough book, but it's something that I think everyone should read. And I mean, there's so many times where when that book breaks when you tell yourself like this is real, and that's the importance of it. That was the book I just finished that I absolutely loved, and if it's one that if you haven't checked it off your list yet, it needs to be done. So
That's awesome. Well, you and I have been connected through Instagram for a while now. And, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show as well is at the beginning of this month, I saw you post a picture on there and it was just incredibly moving. And I was scrolling through my feed and saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have Jon on to talk about this. And it was a picture of you at the end, I think it was the finish line, right, of a triathlon, but it wasn't just you in the photo. So can you kind of tell our viewers and listeners just a little bit about that?
absolutely, it by far. So what it was is it was a triathlon organized by a father whose son has cerebral palsy, and he's an athlete, and he realized, so him and his son, who has cerebral palsy, started doing these races where he would do this race with his son in tow, on a boat, and then on the bike they have this special chariot set up, and they would do the race together. And he realized that other people with cerebral palsy might not have that connection to somebody who can do that with them. So he started an organization that connects the Power Buddies with people with cerebral palsy, so they can just kind of go and experience something like that. So what it was is with triathlon, it was a 1 mile swim, a 24-mile bike ride, and a 6-mile run. And there was 30 of us. There was 30 Power Buddies with our differently abled athletes. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough I got to play college soccer. I've done some things as an athlete. This was the most amazing thing that I've ever done with my athleticism, because when I got on that bike and I was pulling Kenny, my buddy, and people started passing me just left and right. And everyone who passed me just would come up and pedal alongside me, and they would say, "Thank you. Like, you're doing something." And I spent the first hour of that race just in tears, just right, sobbing, because I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that feeling. And it was amazing. And there was one point we worked so hard to get up this hill or this bridge, and I got to the top, and we start like just flying down it, and we're probably going like almost 30 miles an hour. And I just checked real quick over my shoulder to see if Kenny's okay. And he had this biggest smile on his face. And it was just amazing. After the race, we asked him, he was like, "Kenny, what was your favorite part?" And he said like all the girls cheering his name. So it was so amazing for me to be able to share that with somebody.
So the triathlon was for anybody who wanted to compete. So there were people who were competing on their own as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a big triathlon down here, probably a couple thousand participants. And a funny story about that actually is the swim, everyone started at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is it's really just like an inflatable boat that your buddy sits in, and I had a rope tied to my waist. But there were some people that I would pass on the swim, and I think I passed a lady, and I think my boat then ran over her because I was swimming, and I just remember hearing like a ah, but I didn't know what to do. I checked, Kenny was okay. I kept swimming. I was like, yeah. So yeah, there was a few thousand participants. So.
And so how did you hear about this triathlon and this opportunity to have a buddy like that?
So my aunt actually works for UCP. I think it's recently changed its name, but it's United Cerebral Palsy.
Mm-hmm.
So she runs an organization that organizes group homes, basically workforce training. And I saw it on her Facebook, actually. I saw it on her Facebook, and I think I signed up like a minute later. I was like, yes, I think this sounds right. So.
Well, so you sign up. How does the process work? So do you get assigned a buddy early that you get to go meet ahead of time, or do you meet your buddy the day of the event?
Yeah, actually, so it's the organization is called Special Compass, and they had a few practices for us so we can practice interacting with our buddies, getting them on the chariots, which are they're wheelchairs that are specially fabricated for kind of running, attaching the bike to. But I didn't actually meet my buddy until the day before the event. And like, he's my age. I mean, as soon as we met, we were just, chatting, talking it up. And it was just such an amazing experience. And he was such a trooper throughout the whole thing. So it was great.
Well, I love this story. One of my best friends has cerebral palsy, so I know exactly the struggles he faces and the kind of things that he doesn't get to participate in that maybe some able-bodied people can. But you made a comment earlier. So is it just people with cerebral palsy who are part of the buddies, or is it other differently abled people as well?
It's other differently abled people, yeah. And I even saw that that organization had just done a race with a few children with autism. So, I know the organization is, and that's it. Like you said, I think they're just wanting to get people to experience, something maybe a little bit different for them. So.
Now, you talked a minute ago about the emotionalness of it, of just having that moment where you realize the experience that you're giving this person that they may not have otherwise gotten to have. What do you think is the biggest thing you learned from being a part of that triathlon?
We complain so much, and we don't, I can't say we don't, but there was a point in my triathlon where my knee was just throbbing. And I told myself, I was like, my buddy back here, he doesn't have control of his legs, I'm not going to complain about my knee. And I just realized how much, complaining we do, but how blessed and how fortunate we are. And that's what I really learned and I took away with, and that was it. It was just knowing that we're blessed, and to be able to share that, what I feel is, some tools that I have or some blessings that I have it meant a lot to me.
Well, I love that there are organizations out there that exist to provide people of any kind with opportunities that some of us take for granted. And I think it's very commendable that you had every opportunity to participate in that triathlon and represent just yourself and enjoy it just from that aspect. But I think it's really commendable that you took the time to make it an event that you could bring somebody else in on the experience that may not have otherwise had that opportunity. So I think big kudos to you for that. It's such an inspiring tale. Were you able to, or did you share that story with your students?
I did, actually. I did. And they blew me away. They were giving me, it was just amazing. And this is something, I almost don't know how to talk to this because, when people were cheering, a lot of them were like, go JM, cheering me on. And I would try to say, oh, it's Kenny. Like, I'm here for Kenny. And I'm hesitant to take too much praise about this because I know what I was doing it for.
Right.
But yeah, my kids were super impressed. They were like, oh my goodness, like, Mr. White, we didn't know you did that. And seeing a few of the clips that I had, and they were blown away. I did share that with them. And I really try not to keep myself closed off. I like to share things. We try to have a nice dialogue between us about, what's happening on the weekends and, what's life like. So.
Well, and I think that's important that that you take that opportunity to share those moments of your life with the kids, not only to bring them in more connection with you, but I think it also, especially at that age, builds a lot of empathy in them to see the sacrifices that people they respect and admire make for others. Because so often kids think that the only thing we ever do is live and breathe and eat at the school. And
Right.
so to not only show them your life and show them things that you're doing, but also show them with a direct example from you of ways that they can be there for others. I think that's a powerful testament. And too often teachers try, I think, to leave that boundary line there of saying, no, I cannot share this part of my life. I'm here to teach them and nothing else. And it's like, no, the true power comes when they see you as a real person, not just somebody standing at the front of the room.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the best things that I've really established this year. It's just my classroom culture. I just, discipline is in place. Nobody's necessarily walking over the rules. The rules are set, but this culture, this familyness, this just kind of like kind intentions that are taking place in my classroom this year. It's blowing me away. And I can't take all of the credit for it. I mean, I know I have a really good group of kids. And I do think things like that play a big role, like not being hesitant to kind of share a few things about yourself, talking about my adventures at the dog park, and whatever it is. It's just, it's okay for us to kind of let our kids know these things.
Yep. I think that's perfect. Well, the whole point of this video series and audio series is to inspire others to tell their stories, because we learn so much from each other when we take the time to share our own stories. Why do you feel like it's important for other people to get out there and share experiences they've been through or are dealing with?
You know what? We inevitably will cross paths. I know this is something that you've gone through recently, but when I was 22, I lost my mom to cancer. And it's something that for a long time I was very hesitant to hold on to. And now what I realize is I live every day for my mom, and I carry her heart, and what I do with her love.
Mm-hmm.
And when I can be open about that and maybe just not be closed off and just be an open person. Sometimes I'll leave a conversation feeling like, oh, I said too much, but then I realize no, it's okay. We can share things. Yeah. And if there's anything that we can offer when we cross paths, then I want to offer it, and just know that I can offer solidarity sometimes, or, I've been there before. Mm-hmm. So
I love that. Well, Jon, I want to end on one final question, and I want that to be, what is one thing that you have learned that has been the biggest lesson that you feel like you've ever learned?
The biggest lesson that I feel like I've ever learned. Is it in marriage?
Anything.
Because if it's in marriage, it's just to, be nice to my wife. But, so no, but I saw this, it's so weird. Just social media. Somebody posted, I started handling behaviors better when I stopped taking the behaviors personal. And it's changed my approach to behaviors in the classroom.
Right.
Because when when I have a kid who's, being defiant because of an assignment, I'm able to just say hey, there's going to be consequences. I let them know there's going to be consequences, but I don't take it personal. I'm able to just kind of see their bad behavior, accept it, and then move on and teach my class. Right. So in not taking their behaviors personal, like they're doing something to me, it's just changed my outlook on teaching, or at least how I handle behaviors.
That's awesome. Well, Jon, I've got to say, I've loved following you on social media. This is our first time to actually interact voice to voice, face to face. So thank you so much for choosing to be a guest.
No, thank you. Thank you, man. It's
Oh
no,
well.
just anything past likes, you know, just.
So thank you everybody for listening and watching tonight. Make sure you go check out Jon on all his social media accounts and follow him. He shares great stuff. But thank you again, Jon, for being an awesome guest. As everybody goes out this week, make sure you go out there and be brave enough to tell your story, because it's important and it needs to be shared. Check us out next week as I interview another amazing, inspirational guest. Have a great night, everybody.